pretty wild country where I'm sitting at now. And the truth of the matter is that there are literally thousands of people that each and every single year become disoriented, they become lost, they're injured, and they need some rescue or, in worst case, recovery. But more often than that, there are folks out there who do make those poor decisions and poor choices, and sometimes it may end up being a couple-hour dilemma. Some cases may be a few days dilemma. So what can we do? What can we add into our kit bag to help it from going from a normal everyday experience to a traumatic and life-changing experience? What can we do to help stop that, right? It's okay to be a little disoriented every now and then, but it's not okay to become so lost that a search and rescue organization has to come out and try to find your ass, right? We can do better than this, and it's not as hard as what you may think. As far as I can tell, we become extremely too frantic when it comes to survival. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below as we continue to master our craft in this area. You see, it is true that every year there are thousands of search and rescue operations that are conducted in the United States to recover those who are lost, to return those who may have been injured. I said recover those who are lost. Of course, recovery operations are for those who have who didn't make it, right? And while that is true, we have all of these SAR operations that are happening. If we dial into each one, we can begin to understand that most of these SAR operations happen because somebody got injured, right? Or somebody became isolated, as in, like when I was in a case in point, I was in Washington, and in a 4-day weekend, there were like 6 SAR operations that were happening because all of these dudes, they were trying to enjoy some decent weather down below. They went up in elevation to Mailbox Peak, whatever it was called, and they got up there and they got stuck, right? Because they weren't dressed for the weather, and they became immobile. And sometimes it is just literally the weather socking somebody in. Sometimes it's daytime turning to nighttime, and people aren't ready for the changes. And so they reach out for help, and helicopters and crews rush off to help those in need. Rarely is it somebody who just got disoriented and we send somebody out to go find somebody. Most of the time, in those cases of somebody becoming disoriented, it's somebody's had some sort of mental breakdown, if you will, right? They're dealing with Alzheimer's or dementia, and they go out on a walk, a hike, a bike ride, and they get lost and turned around, and somebody sends somebody after them, right? But very rarely is it the case that somebody didn't have all of the 10C items, or categories, if you're a 10C fanatic. They didn't have all the stuff, and that's why they couldn't make it, or that's why they had to make it, or whatever, right? Very rarely is it somebody just quite simply having a breakdown in a vehicle off in the woods, camping, isolated, and then it turns to a survival situation. Like, we pitch this idea of survival to a community that soaks it up because it's fascinating, right? Again, thinking about mountain men when they first came out here to these lands, right? And our Native Americans before them, as they lived here in the mountains and out in the prairies and the deserts. I grew up near the Mescalero and Lipan Apaches and spent time on many of their reservations. It's fascinating history. And we think about what they had to go through in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to carry on these expeditions with limited to no resources. Certainly compared to what we have. Now, a lot of that is romanticized, right? But point being, using a lot of primitive means and methods. And so we begin to pitch these things. Hey, you need to have your analog methods, right? You need to have the ability to make fire without using modern tools or equipment. We pitch these things and we sell them, and we create TV shows that glorify these skills. But if we ever stopped and took a step back and said, that's fun and games, granted, and useful life skills, and it's worthy to be able to work through problems and find solutions to things with limited resources. There is value in that. But is the actual value to the probability of being in a survival situation, right? Case studies would tell us that you will never be in a survival situation. Probably less than 1 in 400 million, right? Maybe not less than 1 in 400 million, but certainly less than 20 in 400 million actual survival situations, right? Even if you went with, said, every search and rescue operation, okay, so now you have 2,000 out of 400 million. Certainly, I think if we are doing our risk assessment, there are things that we should probably categorize a little bit higher than learning how to whittle spoons and make a fire with a shoestring, right? Again, all good skills to have. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, then we need to be honest with ourselves. And look, I am all for analog and old school ways of doing things, right? We become far too reliant on technology. I saw this in the military. When we would go out to the field and I would set up our command post, the very first thing that I would do is work with my XO and say, we need to create an analog means and method of tracking everything for our commander in time and space. All of our troops, all of our equipment, our maintenance, our supplies, our chow, our water, our rations, all of it. I want it on a board. Because when you first get out to a site, you don't have power. You don't have communications. And if you wait for all these things to get up, you're going to be lost and not as up to date as you need to be. So we would create our boards that would track everything. That way we could advise the commander on best courses of action, as well as give him the awareness of where his unit and operations are at. And as systems would become to come alive, then we would transpose those analog systems into a digital system. But we would never shut down the analog systems. And the analog wasn't the redundancy was the digital. Does that make sense? Like the digital means that using our computer, our PowerPoints, all of the GUIs that we had, that is the redundancy. Your real system must be the analog. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when your power goes out. It's a matter of when you get hacked. It's a matter of when you lose communications. It's not a matter of if. It's a matter of when. And so I know this seems kind of like a stoker. You were just saying that we shouldn't worry about all of these things. And yet here you are saying, be concerned with the analog. And if that's what you're thinking, you're not wrong. But don't get it twisted. This has nothing to do, ultimately, with making a fire with a shoestring. Although it does, right? And we have to have this duplicity about us, if you will, right? So, too many times we get stuck in a mindset that says that things are either this or that. Either or. When sometimes it is a both and. It is both this and that. I think we have far greater things to be concerned about other than becoming lost in the woods. Because you're standing around with a cell phone trying to get a good photograph of yourself. It's a beautiful, wide open country that we live in. And I think we just need a good, healthy dose of skepticism and reality. Don't get lost in the sauce and don't drink the Kool-Aid, team. Let me know what you think down in the comments below about dudes like me who pitch the sales and the marketing and all the schools to go along with how to use all the stuff that we sell. The glorification of television and reality shows, as well as keeping things real and honest and old school. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked. Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date with future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.
We know you're out there! Come to my voice!